Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions. Thank you for our time together. Please don't forget tonight, Revival Night, as we preach on Planted by the River of God. We're going to have a great study. But right now, I want us to come back to this book of 2 Kings chapter 5. God is wanting to build a long-term influence for the prophet Elisha with the king of Aram. Now, the favorite general of the king of Aram is a guy by the name of Naaman. You know the story well, Naaman going and dipping 7 times in the River Jordan. But the problem is that influence was affected by corruption in the ministry. Now, this is one of those unpleasant things that we need to talk about. We pick up the story in verse 20. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, "My master should have let this Armenian get away without accepting any of his gifts. As surely as the Lord lives, I will chase after him and get something from him." Now notice, here is the beginning of corruption in ministry. A young assistant convincing himself, talking to himself rather than correcting himself. He doesn't answer himself. I often teach people that when you start talking to yourself, you need to learn to answer yourself or you're going to get in trouble. So he begins to justify, because of prejudice and everything else, the reason that he should go ahead and get some money from this Naaman. And notice, it's not for the work of God. See, corruption in the ministry is never about raising funds to do the work of God. It's about raising funds for yourself personally. He said, "I will chase after him and get something from him." So Gehazi set off after Naaman. When Naaman saw Gehazi running after him, he climbed down from his chariot and went to meet him. "Is everything all right?" Naaman asked. "Yes," Gehazi said, "but my master has sent me to tell you about 2 young prophets from the hill country of Ephraim have just arrived. He would like 75 pounds of silver and 2 sets of clothing to give them." "By all means, take twice as much silver," Naaman insisted. He gave him 2 sets of clothing, tied up the money in 2 bags, and sent 2 of his servants to carry the gifts to Gehazi. "So take 150 pounds of silver." Yeah, it's going to take a few guys to carry it. But when he arrived at the citadel, Gehazi took the gifts from the servants and sent the men back. Then he went inside and hid the gifts inside the house. Now, I'm just going to stop reading there. And I want you to notice, this is the most painful thing of when corruption in the ministry occurs. Because corruption in the ministry seems to always intersect with the generous heart of somebody who has just come from a miracle or salvation with God. They've come to an understanding of the reality of God. And because they've come to this understanding of the reality of God, there's incredible generosity in their heart. And Gehazi must have said, "See, Elijah missed God. This guy would give me twice as much as I even ask for." Well, he can believe all the lies he wants, but what it basically boils down to is this. Corruption in the ministry that was only after getting money for themselves, not for the work of God, intersected with the generosity of a heart that had just been confronted with the reality of God. Now, when you have that situation takes place, you're going to have problems. You're going to have difficulties. You're going to have people taken advantage of. I want to challenge you today. If you're a young pastor, don't ever raise money for yourself. Yes, take offerings for the work of God, but never raise money for yourself. And secondly, I want to challenge you, if God has showed you his reality, don't ever let corruption destroy the generosity that you feel within your heart. This is the biggest downfall of corruption in the ministry. It jades the heart of a young believer. It perverts the heart of a young believer so that generosity is never again part of their heart. Again, the problem, when corruption of the ministry that's only after something for themselves intersects the generosity of a person just touched in the reality of God, you have disaster in the making.